You're at the hospital. Maybe it's a rush. Maybe you've been planning this. But there it is, the stack of paper. It feels daunting. And honestly, most of us just grab a pen and sign wherever they point, right?
Absolutely. It's a common and often stressful moment. And that instinct to just get through it is understandable. But as our sources highlight, that paperwork is far more significant than most people realize.
Right. It's easy to dismiss it as just administrative hurdles. But this deep dive is all about understanding what's actually in that stack. We've pulled from resources like Joint Commission International, the National Accreditation Board for Hospitals and Healthcare Providers, and materials from Supreme Medic Consultancy's Lifelines content.
Yeah.
Our mission, to unpack what those documents mean for your care, your wallet, and, well, your rights.
And hopefully by the time we're done, you should feel a lot more prepared to face that admission desk. It's about shifting from feeling like things are just happening to you to actively understanding and, engaging with the process.
Taking charge a bit more.
Exactly. The sources talk about moving from just going along for the ride to taking control of your care journey.
Okay, so let's dig into that first point. Why is this stack more than just a formality you scribble your name on? What makes it so critical?
Well, what's really interesting here is that the sources are very clear. These documents, they actually constitute a binding legal and medical agreement.
A legal agreement, wow.
Yeah. It's not just bureaucratic process. It's the formal start of the relationship between you and the hospital, legally speaking.
That definitely raises the stakes.
It does. And signing it without understanding, as one source warns, may lead to surprises later. And nobody wants surprises when it comes to healthcare.
Tell me about it. So beyond just being a formal agreement, what specifically does this paperwork govern? What's it deciding?
It lays out several fundamental things. Crucially, it covers what treatment will be given. That's the broad authorization for the hospital to provide care. It also addresses the vital question of who pays and how, detailing the financial understanding. And very importantly, it outlines your rights and responsibilities as a patient during your stay.
I see. And this need for a clear agreement between patient and hospital, that feels like it ties into those bigger ideas of healthcare quality and safety standards, doesn't it? You mentioned JCI and NABH.
Precisely. Organizations like Joint Commission International JCI, they're a global leader focused on patient safety and quality, setting these really rigorous standards internationally.
Okay.
And here in India, NABH, which is part of the Quality Council of India, sets similar benchmarks. A fundamental part of the standards these bodies promote is ensuring clear, informed agreements between hospitals and patients.
Makes sense.
It's really a foundational element for an accountable and safe healthcare system. You can't really ensure quality care without a clear understanding of the plan and, the permissions involved.
That makes a lot of sense. It's part of building that trusting relationship and ensuring accountability. So if this paperwork is so important and impacts so much, what's actually in the stack? How do we start deconstructing it?
Okay, let's break it down into key categories you'll almost certainly encounter, drawing from what the sources highlight. First, there are the forms establishing, who you are and how to contact loved ones.
The basics, like name and address.
Exactly, your foundational personal details, name, address, date of birth, that kind of thing. And critically, up-to-date emergency contact information. Make sure they have the right person and number.
Good point.
The sources also note the need for official ID things like Aadhaar, PAN card, or maybe a passport are typically required. It's about verifying identity, both for your safety and for administrative purposes.
Got it. Identity and who to call. What's next?
Then you'll probably face the forms detailing your health story. This is often the medical history form.
This one feels incredibly important for getting the right care. What are the absolute must-include details here, according to the sources?
This form is vital, yeah. And the sources really emphasize accuracy here. While it asks for general history, past illnesses, hospitalizations, surgeries, there are a few pieces they particularly stress.
Like what?
An accurate, complete list of all known allergies is paramount. This isn't just medications. It could be substances, environmental factors, anything. Getting this wrong can have really serious consequences.
Okay, allergies number one.
Right. Also crucial is a precise list of your current medications, including the dosage and how often you take them. If you can, bring your actual prescriptions or a very clear list.
That seems sensible.
And having existing medical records like recent test results or imaging, x-rays, that sort of thing, is also highly recommended by the sources. Think of this form as providing the essential backstory your medical team needs instantly.
Allergies and current meds, those feel non-negotiable for safety.
Okay, so we've established who you are in your health history. What about giving the hospital permission to actually do things? That must be the consent forms. Yes, the forms related to what they'll do. There's typically a general admission consent. This is your broad authorization for evaluation and standard treatment.
So like permission to check you out and do basic stuff.
Pretty much. It confirms your identity, notes your condition, and grants general permission for the hospital to proceed with necessary care. Always, always check that the details on this form match you and your condition. Make sure your name's spelled right, date of birth, everything.
And what if the patient can't sign, like if they're unconscious?
Good question. The sources mention ensuring a family member or designated representative is listed and can sign in that situation, following hospital policy, of course.
Okay. And what about specific procedures, like getting an IV or tests or even surgery?
Right. So there's often a general consent for medical procedures. This might cover more routine things like starting an IV line, injections, maybe an ECG, standard diagnostic tests.
Standard stuff.
But then the sources specifically call out the high-risk consent forms. This is where you really need to pause and pay attention.
High risk. That sounds like something to take very seriously.
Absolutely. These forms are required for significant interventions, things like surgery, dialysis, mechanical ventilation, procedures with known significant risks.
So what's on that form?
The form will explicitly outline the specific procedure being proposed, the potential risks involved, and they should be clearly stated any alternative treatment options available, and the potential outcomes, including the serious ones, like chances of adverse events, disability, or even death.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, the sources are very clear. Take your time with a specific form. This is where you absolutely must ask questions until you fully understand what's being proposed, why it's needed, and what the potential upsides and downsides are.
And it's within these consent discussions that our right to ask questions and even refuse treatment comes into play. Is that right?
Exactly. The sources reinforce this key patient right. You have the right to ask for clarification on anything you don't understand on any form, but especially these consent forms.
No question is too small, basically.
Not at all. And crucially, you have the right to refuse treatment you aren't comfortable with, provided you understand the potential consequences of that refusal. Consent, by definition, must be informed. It's not real consent if you don't understand what you're agreeing to.
Okay. Identity, medical history, consent for treatment. That covers the medical side pretty well. But there's also the big question of money. How do the financial forms break down?
Yes, the financial part. This category deals with how you pay. You'll definitely have forms for insurance details or a payment declaration.
What are policy numbers and stuff?
Exactly. This involves providing policy numbers, group numbers, identifying the payer, your insurance company, and noting if a third-party administrator, a TPA, is involved for handling cashless claims, which is pretty common with insurance here.
Okay.
You'll need to confirm your payment method, whether it's insurance, maybe corporate coverage that requires an authorization letter, or if you're paying yourself, self-pay via cash or credit card.
And the choice of room makes a big difference too, right? I remember seeing different options.
Huge difference, financially speaking. The room category selection form really matters. Your choice, whether it's a general ward, semi-private room, private room, maybe even a suite, directly impacts the daily charge.
Right.
And crucially, it can affect your eligibility for certain fixed-price treatment packages and, very significantly, your insurance coverage limits. Some policies have caps based on room type.
So you could end up paying more out of pocket if you pick a fancy room your insurance doesn't fully cover.
Precisely. The sources really emphasize clarifying your insurance coverage for different room types before you choose. Exceeding your policy's room rent limit is a very common reason for unexpected costs later.
Good tip. And do they give you an idea of the total cost up front, or is it just a guess?
For planned admissions, hospitals should be able to provide an estimated cost of care. The sources strongly recommend asking for this estimate in writing, not just verbally.
Get it on paper.
Yes. Also, make sure you understand their policies on deposits, which are often required, especially for elective, non-emergency procedures, and their refund or cancellation terms for those deposits or any packages you might buy.
That's a lot to keep track of, especially the money side. Is there like a document that summarizes our part of the deal, our rights and responsibilities in all this?
Yes, there should be. You should receive a document outlining your patient rights and responsibilities. Hospitals adhering to quality standards, like those set by NABH or JCI, are generally required to provide this.
What does that usually cover?
It typically lists your fundamental rights, things like the right to respectful and considerate care, the right to privacy and confidentiality, the right to get information about your condition and treatment in a way you understand, and the right to participate in decisions about your care.
Okay, those sound important.
They are. And it also outlines your responsibilities as a patient. Things like providing accurate and complete information about your health, asking questions when you don't understand, following the treatment plan you agreed to, and respecting hospital rules and personnel. It's really a key document protecting both sides, the patient and the providers.
Phew. Okay, that's a really helpful breakdown of the stack. It still sounds like a lot, especially when you're not feeling your best or maybe you're stressed. So, based on the sources, what are the absolute essential do's, the things you should definitely do when facing this paperwork?
The advice really distills down to several key actions. First, and probably most important, do take the time to read everything, or at least try to skim it all. Don't sign anything blindly, even if you feel rushed or you're in pain.
That feels counterintuitive in an emergency, maybe, but I see why it's crucial.
It is hard, but vital. Second, DO, ask questions. Seriously. If any term, any cost, any clause is unclear, ask for clarification. The sources are really firm on this.
Okay.
There's no such thing as a stupid question when your health and your finances are on the line.
Right. Don't be embarrassed to ask.
Absolutely not. Third, DO, ensure all the information you provide is accurate and up to date. Double-check your personal details, your medical history, especially allergies and meds, and your emergency contacts. Accuracy is key.
What if you're just feeling too overwhelmed by the sheer volume of it all?
That's a great point. DO, consider having a trusted family member or friend with you, if possible, to help review the documents. A second pair of eyes can be absolutely invaluable when you're stressed or unwell.
That's smart.
Also, before you actually put pen to paper, DO, take a final moment to review everything you filled out and the specific document you're about to sign. Just a quick once-over.
Okay.
And finally, two more things. DO, ask for copies of everything you sign for your own records. That's really important. And specifically for costs or treatment packages, DO asks for written estimates. Don't rely solely on verbal information for those critical financial details. Get it in writing.
Those are really solid, practical steps. Okay, now let's talk about the flip side. What are the major don'ts? The common mistakes the sources warn us against making.
Yeah, the pitfalls are often just the opposite of the do's, really. First, don't rush through the forms, especially in emergencies, if you can help it. Resist that pressure to just sign quickly without reviewing key details like your medical history or contact info.
Easier said than done sometimes, but important.
Very true. Also, don't ignore the fine print. Those terms and conditions, they really do matter and can affect your treatment options or the billing situation later on.
The details really matter here, don't they?
They absolutely do. Also, don't leave sections blank or unsigned unless specifically instructed to. Make sure everything that needs your input has it.
Okay.
And building on asking questions, don't sign any form if you genuinely don't understand its purpose or what it contains. If you're unclear, stop and ask before signing.
Makes sense.
Lastly, and this echoes the do about written estimates, don't rely solely on verbal explanations for critical details like costs, insurance coverage specifics, or refund policies. Always try to get those key financial points documented in writing. Verbal assurances can be easily misunderstood or forgotten.
This whole conversation completely changes how I'll look at that stack of paper next time. It really is about being an active participant, isn't it? Not just a patient.
Exactly. That's the core message, I think, from the sources. Understanding this paperwork is your first vital step in actively participating in your own healthcare. It truly helps you, as you said, take control of your care journey rather than just being a passive recipient of whatever happens.
And this sometimes complex process, maybe even frustrating in the moment, it's actually part of that larger framework for quality healthcare that we talked about earlier with JCI and NABH.
Yes, absolutely. The need for clear, documented agreements for consent, for financial understanding, for outlining rights, it's foundational to the standards promoted by organizations like JCI and NABH. And companies like Supreme Medic, through the services they offer hospitals, like helping with accreditation, and through educational content like their Lifeline series, they help hospitals implement these systems and educate people about them. It's all part of creating a system of accountability and clarity, even if the paperwork itself can feel dense sometimes.
So the key takeaway is crystal clear. Understanding your hospital admission paperwork isn't just optional, it's essential for advocating for yourself and aiming for a smoother, more informed hospital stay.
Right. It empowers you. And while we've focused heavily on admission today, the sources do suggest that this same principle of paying attention and understanding applies equally to the discharge process later on. That's another key point in the journey.
That's a good point. Discharge is a whole other hurdle. It really makes you consider the entire system, doesn't it? Thinking about this crucial first step, the admission, and all the detailed documentation involved, it kind of highlights this ongoing effort in healthcare, this balancing act. Well, balancing these rigorous standards needed for safety and quality, which we need, with the equally important need for clarity and genuine empowerment for every single patient walking through the door. How can we, the patients and the system together, continue to evolve these essential processes to make them even more accessible, less intimidating, and truly patient-centered in the future, building on the foundations that standards, bodies, and support services have laid down?
That's a really powerful question to think about. How do we make it work better for everyone involved?
Exactly. Something for all of us to ponder.